Hello everyone and welcome to the Spring Boot Basics series tutorial. So in this video, we will learn about how we are going to use Spring Boot to create Spring application. This tutorial series requires no prerequisite knowledge, but it does requires some knowledge of the Spring framework itself. Spring is a framework which supports numerous frameworks like Struts, Hibernate, Tapestry, EJB and many more. Now, in order to dig more about Spring Boot, let's discuss our today's agenda. But before that, do not forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon. So first, we will discuss about what is Spring Boot. Moving ahead, we will learn about what is Maven. Then, we will dig into setting up development environment. And at the end, we are going to create a basic Spring application. So let's start with what is Spring Boot. As you can see all over here, there are two words. The first one is Spring and the second word is boot. Spring deals with the Spring framework, which helps you to create the enterprise application. And on the other hand, bootstrap means bootstrapping an application, meaning the process to configure your application to have it up and running is sometimes tedious. And the advantage of a Spring Boot is that it eliminates most of the Spring concepts in the process by providing default configurations and tools that are set up automatically for you. So if you have some familiarity with the Spring framework, then you would be aware of that you need a lot of dependencies, jar files to create the Spring application. But Spring basically simplifies our work. Spring Boot provides some predefined starter packages that are like the Spring modules and some third-party libraries and tools together. As an example, the Spring Boot Starter Web helps you to build a standalone web application. It groups the Spring Core web libraries with JSON handling, validation, logging, auto-configuration, and even an embedded Tomcat server are among some of the tools. In addition to the starters, the auto-configuration plays a key role in the Spring Boot. This feature makes adding functionality to your application extremely easy. Following the same example, just by including the web starter, you will get an embedded Tomcat server. So there is no need to configure anything. This is because the Spring Boot auto configuration classes scan your class path, properties, components, etc. and load some extra beans and behavior based on that. To be able to manage different configuration options for your Spring Boot application, the framework introduces profiles so that you can use profiles, for example, to set different values for the host to connect when to using a database in a development environment and a production environment. I hope so you would have got idea regarding what is Spring Boot and why do we even needed this technology. Now, let us discuss some of the features that Spring Boot provides. Or what does Spring Boot stands for making the backend development easy. The first thing is that Spring Boot makes certain configuration choices for you. And it says that it's a good starting point. So you can choose this configuration and see how it works for you. You can change things if required. The second thing is that if you have to do tons of different things and it requires configuration. So the Spring Boot provides default configuration for the 70% of the use case and the rest 20% you can customize it according to your project needs. Third is the standalone. Spring application created from the Spring Boot will be the standalone application. It means that when you are building the Spring application, you are creating a var file. You are building the web application that you are gonna deploy on the Tomcat server and on some other servlet. You don't have to find the servlet container to deploy your application. Spring Boot is gonna give you an embedded server. And the fourth and the last one is, it is production ready. You don't have to do anything extra. You can take your application and deploy it to the production. Now, the next concept I want to discuss with you is of Maven. So I assume that you all guys are Java developer with some SDK installed in your system. And when you have created a project, you would have come across Maven. So based on POM, Maven is a strong project management tool. Basically based on project object model. It is used for documentation, dependencies, and project building. Figuring out the issue without Maven, we run into a lot of issues when the project is being developed. and below we are going to discuss few of them. First of all is adding a set of jar files to every project. For the struts, Spring and Hibernate frameworks, we need to add a set of jar files to every project. It must also contains all of the jar dependencies. The second one is establishing the proper project structure. If the proper project structure is not established in the servlet struts, the project will not be implemented. And the third and the last is building and deploying the project. In order for the project to function, we must create and deploy it. So basically, Apache Maven helps us to manage the builds, the documentation, reportings, SCMs, releases, and distribution. That's why we basically need Maven. So in this course, we will be building a Maven project. Now, let's get started with setting up the development environment. So I assume that you all guys are Java developer with some SDK installed on your system. And so if you don't have Java SDK installed, you can go to the Oracle website and download the required SDK based on your operating system. So I will be using Windows. So basically I have the Windows SDK for Java installed. You can also check the current version by going into the CMD by typing Java V. Let me show you this how we can do it. So I have navigated myself to the command prompt. So basically this is a Windows operating system. So all the guys who are with the Windows operating system can follow along. So basically you have to type just Java version and you can see easily my version is 18.0.1.1. So in this way you can see that you have a SDK of Java installed. Now I will show you something else, that how to download the perfect ID for our course. So we'll be using Spring Tool Suite 4 for creating the project. Basically, STS is an IDE for creating the Spring applications. So you can navigate to spring.io/tools where you will get the page something like this. Okay, now basically let me discuss something about this IDE. So this is a development environment built on Eclipse. It offers a ready-to-use environment for the application implementation, execution, deployment, and debugging. It verifies our application and offers prompt application fixes. You can install Spring Tool Suite by visiting this link. Okay. Select the platform you are using by clicking. So we are utilizing the Windows platform for this tutorial. Now let me show you how you can download. Okay. So here you are gonna get your options. So I'm gonna select the Windows one. Okay, you can just click on this. So this tool suite have started. Since I have already pre-installed it, so I don't have to do it again. But for your purpose, you have to download something like this. Now the step 2 is extract the zip file and install the STS. When the Spring Tool Suite 3 launcher appears, there will be a dialog box. Just click on it. On the launch button, if you would like, you can alter your workspace. And finally, our STS will be launched. Let me show you how to open the workspace and we will be getting started with our project. So as you see all over here, the workspace has appeared. So now I'm gonna browse my workspace. So I have browsed my directory all over here, which says that C users admin desktop/course API. That's my perfect folder where I want to create my project. Now after doing this, just you have to click on the launch button. As you can see all over here that our project has appeared all over here. So it has opened in a defined workspace which says that the folder name is course API. Now all you have to do is create the new Spring startup project. So just do it. So as you all can see all over here that we have the name as a field. So I'm gonna name it as course API. Now we have to select the type. So we'll select the type as our Maven project. Okay. Now you can see something like group, artifact and version. So let me tell you each one of them one by one. So if I talk about the group ID, it is like the package name which uniquely identifies the namespace for our project. And artifact ID is kind of the name of the project itself. And here the version is the version of the component which we are using, which is 0.0.1 snapshot. So these are the fields. Now I'm gonna name the group as, so I have named my group as Spring Basic, with the artifact ID as course API. Version is already there, which is 0.0.1 snapshot. Then we have the description, which is the demo project for our Spring Boot, and the package name is spring.basic example. After doing this configuration, you have to just do nothing, just click on the next. Okay. Now we'll be adding some of the dependencies so that for developing our project it would be very easier. So I will be using that one dependency, that is Spring Web. Click on it and choose to finish it. Okay. So now as you can see, our folder is created and this is our project. In this you will see that there are various folders in which there are source, in which you have main and test. So still the project is building, because as you can see all over here. So basically Maven is building the dependencies required for our folder. Let's investigate this folder one by one. So in this source.main.java, we have spring.basic example. Okay. Then we have the resources folder, which we have static templates and application properties. We're going to study about application properties a little bit later, how we can configure like port and all those additional properties in this folder. Then we have the test folder. So suppose for testing your project, suppose if you are working like you need to do unit test or J test, you can just go in this and write the different libraries, import it and do accordingly. Then we have the most important and interesting folder that we will study, that is pom.xml. Let's click on it and see what we have in this. So this is the pom.xml file which is generated. So let's look at the parent section first. Okay. So this is telling that our project is basically the child of the parent project. So our project is something like, you can say, so as you can see all over here, this is the basic project which we have created with our group ID as Spring Basic, artifact ID as Course API with version name 0.0.1 snapshot and name Course API. Okay. So now you will also see a parent section all over here with group ID org.springframework.boot, artifact ID springboot.starter.parent, version 2.7.5 and relative path. But what does it mean and why this has been added? Let me explain you. So there is a very Maven concept which says that the parent and the child things are like relatively Maven to each other. Because this helps your project. Suppose our project is this, so it is inheriting the basic configuration provided in the Spring Boot starter.parent. Okay, so basically our project is inheriting the configuration provided by the Spring Boot starter parent. And this parent and the child thing is kind of a very Maven concept. So it would be a thing that the use of Spring Boot starter parent is works by the methodology of convention over configuration, which I have discussed earlier in the Spring feature slide. For the 70% of the use case, Spring provides the default configuration. And for the rest of the 30%, we can customize the configuration based on our needs. So with the Spring here, there are certain configuration that just comes along with it. So the Spring team has created the Spring Startup project and they have put all the default configuration into it. So this is the Spring Startup web parent, which contains the default configuration provided by the Maven to build our project. Now, the next section which you're gonna see is the dependencies section. Okay, so in the dependencies section, you can see we have the group ID as org.springframework.boot, we have org.springframework.boot, then we have the artifact ID as Spring Boot Starter Web. Okay, so what does this mean that? So this is the Spring Starter Web parent, which contains the default configuration provided by the Maven to build our project. The next, you can see these dependencies, which contains the set of dependencies, the jar files, which serves as a dependency management system for our project. Basically, the Maven is doing the task of dependency management. So all the required configuration which we need by default, Maven provides us. In the technical terms, if I talk about, here is that you can consider the Spring Starter Web as a meta dependency which pulls in all the web related jars. So I hope so would have got a little bit idea regarding what are the dependency section and why we are using it and what's the significance of this pom.xml. You can also add the extra dependency just by adding a certain block of code all over here. which we are going to do a little bit later. Now, let me move forward and help you out to create a simple Spring application. Now, go on to src main/java and click here. With the right click, you can select to create a class. Now, you can name the package as, suppose we are going to say spring dot application, okay, dot basics. Then we can give the name as spring application. Then we are also going to see that what we are going to need. We are going to need a main method. Okay, so just I'm going to click all over here, and also we could create our project. Just click the finish. So in the package spring application basics, we have spring application.java. Now let me show you how you can create the basic spring application. So what we have done all over here is we have created a class spring application along with the main method. As I have told you earlier that Spring creates the standalone application. It does not need any servlet container. It does not needs to be deployed on the server. The way it works is that it has a class with the main method just like any other Java program, and this creates the required servlet container. So it starts it and hosts on the Spring application. As you can see, the code written here is quite simple. We have the class and the main method. So what we are going to do, we're going to tell that this is a Spring application by using an annotation all over here. So as you can see all over here, there is an annotation over our class called public Spring application @ Spring application. So this is basically the annotation. So what you will do all over here, just click all over here and you can change to springboot org. So we are basically importing a package called springboot framework autoconfigure.springboot application. So this tells that this is the starting point of our Spring application. Now what we have to do all over here in the main method is we have to use a simple line of code to tell us that let's run our Spring application. So as you can see all over here, I have written this code spring application.run then spring application.class/args. Okay, so let me tell you, this is the static class which is Spring application and it is using the .run method which accepts the two parameter. The first one is a class. Okay, so our class is Spring application all over here. Okay, so I have added the same thing, and the next argument is just the args. This argument all over here is written. Suppose also you want to add certain argument, you can do it all over here. So that's how we have created the static class with the run method. Now the next task is to click on the run. So just run it. So here you are gonna get the three options. The first is Java application in container, and the Spring Boot app. So I'm gonna just run as a Spring Boot app. Just click on this. Okay, and let run. Okay, now select everything. So as you can see all over here, we have the beautiful ASCII all over here written as Spring. Then there are a bunch of things going on all over here, and you can see at here it says that our Tomcat started port on 8080, which shows that our application is hosted on the port 8080, and this shows that our application has started in 4.723 seconds. So it was very easy to show you that how you can simply create a Spring application, even though our project doesn't have any functionality, but this is a basic way in which you can create the Spring application.
Just a quick info guys. Intellipaat provides Java certification online training, mentored by industry experts, the course link of which is given in the description below.